Let's start off with the first question. Like, how did you guys get started with School of Bots? How did you run into bots? And what kind of a headspace were you in when you were like, okay, this seems like a viable product or idea to get started with. I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, so right before F8 in 2016, which is when, they launched Messenger bots, we were thinking about starting some sort of like digital marketing agency because the goal was for us to be able to travel. And I had a lot of friends who are already digital nomads. So I was like, this is really cool. I want to do this too. And I was just trying to figure out like the best way to do that. So we're thinking, Facebook ads, social media management, something, anytime you look up how to make money online, I feel like those are like the top things that come up, or like e-commerce, affiliate blogs, those are kind of like the top four, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we were thinking of because I already knew some people who were doing that. And so I was like, okay, at least we'll have some guidance and whatnot. But then when F8 came out about chatbots, we started playing around with them. And since obviously we're leaning more towards doing Facebook ads, we were really interested in this. And once we started playing around with them, we just kind of realized like it was a lot of fun. And there were so many different use cases that were just like popping up in our heads as we were going through the beta bots that they had done on Messenger. So like 1-800-Flowers, tons of other ones, TechCrunch, kind of the big ones that a lot of people have interacted with as their first bots. So once we started doing that, we realized that we wanted to kind of play around with this and see if this could be a viable option for our agency focus instead of doing the other stuff, just like purely focus on chatbot work. So we started doing some client tests, working up some case studies, and then we realized that we could go all in on this. So we did that and then started traveling and pretty much have just been building the agency since then.
So you guys, Kyle, you about to go?
No, yeah, but like as far as, your question is more how we got started with School of Bots. That was the whole premise of how we got started with our bot agency, Ineffable. And then through the process of figuring out, everything about how to start an agency and how to sell bots and how to really build the bots that our clients wanted, we realized there was kind of like a huge gap in education out there for that. So, and we took at that point, this was mid 2017. Mm-hmm. So, at that point we had taken every single course out there, paid thousands, almost 10 grand in every single type of consulting and coaching out there in the chatbot space at the time. So after doing that, I just kind of realized that there was a huge gap in the things that we had actually learned the hard way, by trial and error, by building an agency up from the ground and like going out and selling to every type of prospect out there and so on and so forth. So having learned all that the hard way rather than the courses kind of frustrated me that we had spent so much money and like not actually gotten any of the knowledge that was actually beneficial to us. So we decided to go in and fill that gap and create a course.
I'm curious to see what your initial conversations with vendors were, or with business owners, because, you're coming up to them and you're saying, hey, look, there's this really cool thing called chatbots. It's this thing where you can plug into your Facebook page and your website. By then you couldn't even probably plug it into your website, right? But you're like, it's on 24/7. It's like a robot that talks like you and it takes your data and whatnot. What was that initial conversation like? What kind of objections were thrown at you and how did you get over them?
Yeah, it was definitely very interesting. I've been doing sales. I started out in like door-to-door sales, 10 years ago. So I've been doing sales and stuff for a long time. And honestly, having gone into this was such a unique experience because, when we first started selling chatbots back in 2016, like no one had even heard of or even knew what a chatbot was, right? Still to this day, I would say the adoption rate is like super low. We're at like 85% of the conversations we have, people just have never even heard of what you're talking about is. But when we first started, it was even worse where, we went to a beauty conference to try to sell all these big beauty companies, right? And I'm sitting there talking to them. These beauty companies adopt every single social media platform out there, right? They're on Tumblr, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. Like they have massive followings on every single social platform. So their early adoption rate as far as social media and new technology goes is really high. And yet not any of them had heard about chatbots. When I kind of handed my phone over to them and let them play with the chatbot, they're like, well, this is crazy. Like no one had even heard of it yet. So we're still in that phase where honestly the toughest part in selling a chatbot to someone is to get them to even understand what a chatbot is in the first